Diane, and I'm from West Point. I'm from West Point. I'm mom to 4 children. Our daughter Brittany and her husband Brian live in Lancaster, Pennsylvania with their daughter Willa. Our son Brady lives in Los Angeles. And our son Father Taylor is here in Omaha. And Spencer and his wife Lauren are also in Omaha.
Sorry, you gotta get it closer to your mouth.
Okay, good. Okay. I've been married to my husband Dana for 42 years, and I've been a hairstylist for 43 years. When I was invited to speak tonight, my first thought was, I don't know if I can do this. I'm going to be way too nervous, speaking in front of all of these people. And I shared that with a friend who said, Diane, you talk to people all day long. You're standing behind that chair, you're talking all day long. She said, just pretend you're behind your chair. So I'd like to ask all of you to please turn around so I can see the backs of your heads, and I'll be right at home. I honestly really thought there's a lot of stories out there way more profound than what I would have to say. But then I thought if I can say something to give somebody hope or give somebody strength, I should share my story. My oldest sister, Sandy, died in 2009 of metastatic breast cancer. She was just 57. She had tested positive for the BRCA gene, which is the hereditary breast cancer gene. Soon after her death, I was tested for that gene, and I breathed a huge sigh of relief when I found out that I was negative. About a year after I tested, I was in for my regular mammogram, and they saw a suspicious spot, had me come back. I had another mammogram. I had a biopsy. The day after the biopsy, my family traveled out to Pennsylvania to visit our daughter, so I had asked them at the clinic, please don't call me, I'll call you when I get back. So we had some travel delays. We got back home from Pennsylvania, and I was really feeling positive. I didn't think that I was going to get any bad news. Our hair salon is attached to our home, so we got home. We had to go immediately back to work within like an hour and a half after getting home, and I thought when I find time, I'll make that phone call, I'll call the clinic and find out the results of this test. I was flabbergasted when the doctor said, Diane, it's cancer. I'm like, you gotta be kidding me. I tested negative for that gene. I know that everybody's breast cancer isn't hereditary, but I didn't expect that news. So I went back out into the salon. My next client was waiting for me, and I had to move on and get the haircut done. It was 3 days before Christmas. I thought, how am I going to tell my family? Luckily, the cancer that I had was not the metastatic kind. It was early stage. I had a lumpectomy, 4 rounds of chemo, and 33 radiation treatments. I knew I was going to lose my hair. I prepared myself. My dear hairdresser friend Shelley took me to my first chemo treatment. We walked into the cancer center, and I was astounded to see a familiar face. There sat Taylor. He had driven home the night before from St. Paul. He was in seminary, and surprised me to be there with me for my first chemo treatment. I thought, well, this is great because we're going wig shopping after this, so who better, my hairdresser friend, and my son, to tell me what looks good on me, what doesn't. And I thought, I can't lose it over this hair loss. I have wiped the tears and shaved the heads of several of my clients, and I've got to stay strong. About 2 weeks after my first chemo treatment, my hair started coming out in handfuls, and it was time to have my husband, who's also a barber, shave my head. There may have been a tear or two, but I was determined not to let my hair loss get me down. I laugh now, but I was mortified one night. The boys and I stood in line after my hair started growing back, and somebody snapped a picture, Dana apparently. And a while later, we were posing because we had matching hairdos. So as you look at my boys now, their hair isn't quite that short anymore. And a couple hours later, I jumped onto Facebook, and there was that picture. And I said, Spencer, he was about a senior at that time. get that picture off of Facebook. He said, Mom, it's too late. Everybody's already seen it. What do I do? That wasn't the first time that my kids lovingly embarrassed me. I had to swallow my pride. I had to suck it up. My hair grew back. I got over the other side effects of my 4 chemo treatments, and I was so grateful to God for restoring my health. Spencer had graduated, and now we were empty nesters. My life was always very busy, very full of lots of activities, my full-time job in the salon. I got involved in mission work. I took a trip to Africa. I went on a cruise with my mom and my sisters. I started making a weekly holy hour. I joined some organizations. I did lots of landscaping in my yard. I worked on various projects in our old house, and life was great. In 2016, I was just 4 months shy of my celebratory 5-year anniversary of my breast cancer diagnosis. Spencer had graduated from college by that time and had moved back to Omaha. In 9 months, Taylor was going to be ordained as a transitional deacon. Brady was happy and successful with his job in California, and Brittany and Brian had become parents to our first grandchild. I couldn't wait to get to Pennsylvania to meet little Willa. I was so excited to go. She was 5 weeks old, and I was headed east to visit. The day before I left, I had just some really weird gut issues. And I thought, well, that's weird. Must be that sandwich that I bought at the local convenience store. I'd eaten a half a sandwich, and I felt like I had eaten a 5-course meal. And I thought, well, that's really weird. I didn't really feel sick, but it was just kind of weird. I had a couple odd pains across the top of my stomach, and I thought, I don't know what that is, gallbladder? Who knows? Anyway, off I went to Pennsylvania, and how awesome it was to meet that sweet little girl. As the days went by, I continued to have a few more weird stomach issues. My skin started getting itchy. I was thinking about gallbladder. What else do you think about? I didn't feel like I had the flu, anything like that. Dana flew out to spend some days with us. We celebrated a lot, went out to eat a lot. I just felt a little off. I couldn't eat very much. I didn't really feel sick, but I just felt kind of weird. Then I noticed that the whites of my eyes were starting to get yellow. And I noticed that my skin was getting a little bit yellow. And I thought, well, when I get back home, I better get a doctor appointment. So I got an appointment shortly after I got home. And when I walked into the doctor's office, she said, yeah, you do look a little bit yellow. And I said, well, what do you make of that? She said, well, it could be your gallbladder. It could be hepatitis. I was like, hepatitis? Like, how do you get hepatitis? And wouldn't I feel sicker if it was hepatitis? Anyway, she said, we need to schedule an ultrasound. And so a couple days later, I had the ultrasound, and I couldn't wait to get it over with, get the results. I wanted to ask that ultrasound technician, what do you see? But I knew I couldn't. I knew better than that. So I left the hospital. Something told me, I was in Fremont. Something told me, don't leave Fremont right away. So I went through Walgreens, picked up a prescription, and I pulled over into the parking lot to answer a text message, and my phone rang. It was my doctor. She said, Diane, where are you? I thought, was I not supposed to leave the hospital? I said, I'm in the Walgreens parking lot. Why? She said, you have a mass on your pancreas. Just like that. She said, I want to make sure first she said, I want to make sure you're not driving. You have a mass on your pancreas. We need to do a CAT scan. You're most likely going to have surgery. You're going to have to decide if you want to go to the med center, if you want to go to Methodist. And she was panicking, which put me in panic mode. And she said, we're going to try to line up this CAT scan, and I'll call you back. So I waited in that parking lot, waited for about 2 hours, waiting for that call back. And I didn't know who to call. It's the middle of the day. Everybody's at work. My husband's at work. My sisters are at work. I can't lay this on just anybody at this hour. So I called Taylor at the seminary. He knew I was going in for some tests, so he took my call, and I just started to cry. And I said, Taylor, there's a mass in my pancreas. And he said, what? What the heck does that mean? And I said, I don't know. And he said, Mom, I have to get back into class, but I'm going to ask my fellow seminarians to pray for you. So I headed home, I still had an afternoon of appointments. They scheduled the CAT scan for later. I had a pancreatic biopsy on my 56th birthday on September 30th, and I found out that I did indeed have cancer. That wasn't all, though. The CAT scan was inconclusive whether or not it had reached my liver. So I had to go back in for a liver biopsy. The liver biopsy was supposed to be an in and out procedure, and some things went awry. We found out that the tumor was blocking my bile duct, and so the bile was backing up into my liver. That's why I was turning yellow. I woke up from that biopsy, the second try, and I couldn't move. I was so sore. I felt like I'd been hit by a truck. I didn't know what they had done. I had thought they were going down through my nose. They went in through my abdomen, and my mind was really foggy. I was on a lot of pain meds, and that first night, I sat up in bed, and in walked Archbishop Lucas. I thought, I must be dying. Tater has called the Archbishop. Actually, I think he really was there to visit somebody else. I just happened to be there. He came in to see me. And he anointed me, and he prayed with me. And when he left, I was very grateful that he'd stopped in, but I thought, oh my gosh, I can't believe that the Archbishop has seen me looking like this. But God's plans are always great. Spencer had just moved back to Omaha, so he actually came and stayed with me in my room for 2 days. We're self-employed. We have a hair salon. Dana's in the salon. If he would have come down and stayed with me, I would have been so stressed out about business back at home. So he said, well, if Spencer's there, then I'll stay back and mind the salon, and I'll come down and get you when it's time to take you home. Spencer was an absolute angel. He slept on the couch. I had a couch in my room because they weren't planning on me staying. And so I got a suite. Everybody said, how did you score this room? I don't know. But Spencer stayed with me. He had been a CNA prior to going off to college, so he knew how to help me. I could barely move. I couldn't get out of bed. He helped me roll over, sit up, get out of bed, all kinds of things. He was my absolute angel. I returned home. That next weekend, I managed to get to Mass. I felt like a circus monkey. West Point's a small town. Everybody knows everybody. Word travels fast. I looked terrible. I was yellow. I was weak. And I knew everybody was looking at me. I knew everybody was looking at me like, is she going to die? Pancreatic cancer is deadly. I recouped enough to go back to work in a few days, and I started chemo a week later. My first treatment, I got sicker than a dog. And I thought, what's up with that? I didn't get that sick when I had the breast cancer chemo. I was really scared. My sisters came from out of state to see me. They said to say hello tonight. I think they're watching. Hi, Kathy and Michelle. They were absolute angels, too. They took turns. They came out several times to help me and take me to chemo. My 82-year-old mom came out to see me. My dear friend Kelly surprised me, flew all the way home from Slovenia, where she was stationed with her husband. There was a knock on my door one morning at 8 o'clock. I'd just gotten out of the shower. My husband said, Diane, somebody's here to see you. I said, who in the heck would come at 8 o'clock in the morning? She said, I'm here to stay with you. I'm going to stay a week. I'm going to help you, do whatever you need me to do. And I thought, they all think I'm going to die. How can this be happening? So many in our community reached out to me, reached out to our family. And I thought, I can't believe this. I want to see the boys get married. I want to see Taylor be ordained. I want to see my granddaughter grow up. And late one afternoon, I was dozing in the chair, and I had a dream. I had been praying for a young man from our community that was a family friend. They had lived in our community. They'd moved to Omaha, and he'd been in an accident, and he had a head injury. And I was praying for him, and I fell asleep, and I had a dream that seemed so realistic that this young man and I were just kind of slumped over on each other, and the Blessed Virgin's arms were just around us. We couldn't move, we couldn't speak, but she had her arms around us just like the Pieta, just like Jesus in Mary's lap. I didn't know if it was a dream or if it was real. It seemed so real. At that moment, I felt peace. I knew I was in the protective arms of Mary. I knew that she was interceding for me and our young friend. That was my moment of surrender. I knew that there was no way I could handle this alone and that I had to give this to God. I had to quit worrying about dying. I had to muster up the strength to forge ahead. That first chemo treatment was the only one that made me sick. They changed up some of my medicine. They scheduled my chemo out for 6 weeks, one every 2 weeks. The treatments lasted about 5 hours. My friends took turns driving me. Other friends like Stacy and Muff would come visit me, bring me lunch. My sons came when they could. My little chemo room was like a party room. Obviously, this was all pre-COVID. As time went by, they booked my chemo out 8 weeks, 10 weeks. The tumor in my pancreas didn't shrink much at first, but little by little it did shrink. After about 9 months, the liver spot wasn't seen again. After about 24 weeks, one of those chemo drugs was dropped, as it caused numbness in my hands and my feet, and it would be too debilitating if I continued it. I was glad because my treatment time then decreased by 2.5 hours. Also, my mind wasn't quite so foggy without that drug, so I could drive myself. Then my friend was diagnosed with, guess what? Pancreatic cancer. She died less than a year later. Her name was Diane. Her son had just been ordained. I attended her funeral, and I almost felt like I was at my own funeral. It was one of the most uncanny feelings I've ever experienced. When I walked into the church and viewed her in the casket, in her hand she held a maniturgium, which is a small white cloth. I knew that I, too, would be given a cloth like that at Taylor's first Mass, just months later. When a man is ordained, his hands are blessed by the bishop with chrism oil. The cotton cloth that's used to wipe his hands is about the size of a hanky. The cloth is given to the mother or the priest at his first Mass. It is customary to believe that upon the mother's death, when God says, "I have given you life, what have you given me?" she hands in the maniturgium and responds, "I have given you my son as a priest." At this, Jesus grants her entry into paradise. It is understood, however, that this is a symbolic custom. There is no free pass into heaven. But it was so odd as we left that church, and the priest said, "Now we take our sister Diane to her final resting place." It was surreal. It seemed so unfair that her life ended too soon. As guilt seemed to creep into my mind, I had to push it away and just stay grateful for the life that I had. Taylor was ordained to the priesthood just a few months later, in 2018. I had a friend tell me, "Diane, we just prayed that you'd at least make it to ordination. We thought you were going to die." Spencer married his wife, Lauren, just a few months later. Little Willa is now 6 years old, and I'm getting to see her grow up. I've gotten to visit her and her parents in Pennsylvania numerous times. Brittany has gotten her master's degree. I've gotten to travel to California to see Brady. I got to celebrate my 60th birthday 2 years ago. Okay, so I had COVID on my birthday. But I postponed my California trip that my mom and my sisters were going to meet me at. We were going to see our son Brady as well. Postponed it, and I got to go a month later. That silly mask that I wore on my face while traveling prior to COVID just to stay safe, that I thought made me stick out like a sore thumb, because nobody wore masks, was destined to become a part of my daily outfit for over a year. Who knew? Cancer has blessed me with more things than I can mention here, but I'm going to share a few things that I've learned over the past years. Don't necessarily heed the doctor's advice when she tells me, "Eat whatever you want. Eat whatever tastes good to you." Tacos and pizza and donuts and candy all taste great. I thought I was going to lose some weight over this. Good friends are an absolute gift from God. So are my sisters. I thank God for all of them every day. My mom, my brothers, my in-laws, nieces, nephews, aunts, cousins that all have surrounded me are my blessing. My family is my everything. The loyalty and friendship of my clients knows no bounds. I can never have enough lip balm, moisturizer, hand lotion, or bottled water around me. Stay off the internet in regards to my cancer. Follow doctor's orders and try to live a healthy life. Don't ever turn down a chance to have the girls over for wine. And don't ever miss a chance to laugh. Take a trip, go to the concert. One can never buy too many flowers. Just ask my husband. Don't turn down offers of help from friends. It is as much a gift to them to help as it is for me to receive the help. It's okay to say no. It's okay to be too tired. It's okay to put my feet up. Time spent in front of the Blessed Sacrament during my holy hour is time well spent and time much needed. Cancer doesn't have to be a death sentence. It can also be the cause of miracles. None of us knows what tomorrow is going to bring, so I'm not going to let cancer let me live in fear. Don't ever ask, how long do I have to live? I never asked my doctor, and she never said. I doubt that she would have said I'd be still going strong 6 years later. God is the only one that has that answer, and I'm not asking him either. I have received prayers from literally all over the world. The impact of those prayers is indescribable. They have carried me and lifted me when I was too ill, weak, or exhausted to pray for myself. I'm starting my 7th year of chemo. My cancer is not genetic, so I'm relieved to know that I have not passed this down on to my kids. Statistics say that somewhere between 3 and 8% of people live beyond 5 years that have been diagnosed with stage 4 pancreatic cancer. It was unbelievable news several CAT scans ago when the report read, no detectable tumor on the head of my pancreas. I still drive myself to my 3-hour chemo sessions every other week at the Nebraska Med Center Cancer Clinic at Village Point. I have blood work done every other Thursday. I've had over 150 chemo treatments. It's working. My doctor has never said that I'm free of cancer, but no scans or blood tests indicate cancer. We're going to keep doing what we're doing. I think we all feel like a miracle has happened. As much as my initial thoughts were about cleaning up my underwear drawer, straightening the storage room out, cleaning out under my bed, all that really matters to God is what's in my head, on my heart, and in my soul. Those are the things that really need to be in order. I pray that God blesses all of you as much as he's blessed me. In this season of Advent, may we all have hope, peace, joy, and love. Merry Christmas to all of you.